a tiny island, one gunshot, and a mystery that refuses to die. On the Orkney Islands, a remote chain of rocky land floating off the coast of Scotland, life moved slow. People knew each other, strangers stood out. Crime was almost unheard of. But on the evening of June 2nd, 1994, everything changed. Inside a small Indian restaurant in the town of Kirkwall, a masked man walked in. He didn't speak, he didn't steal anything. He pulled out a gun and fired a single shot. A young waiter named Shamsuddin Mahmood collapsed, bleeding. Within minutes, he was dead. The killer disappeared into the night. The case would go unsolved for over 10 years. But when the truth finally surfaced, or at least what authorities claimed was the truth, it would tear the island apart, drag in the son of a police officer, and spark accusations of racism, cover-ups, and corruption. This is the story of the Orkney Assassin. Kirkwall, the capital of the Orkney Islands, was not the kind of place where anyone expected murder. But on that evening of June 2nd, 1994, inside a small Indian restaurant called the Mumtaz, that illusion of safety was shattered. The victim, 26-year-old Shamsuddin Mahmood, was standing behind the counter. Shamsuddin had only recently moved to Orkney from Pakistan. He worked hard, was known to be polite, and was preparing for his upcoming wedding. At approximately 7 o'clock that evening, a man entered the restaurant wearing a dark balaclava. His face was completely covered. He was carrying a 9mm pistol. Without speaking a word, the masked figure raised the gun and fired one single shot. The bullet struck Shamsuddin directly in the head. He collapsed instantly. There was no robbery, no struggle, no words exchanged. Only cold, calculated murder. Within minutes, the killer had vanished. The police arrived quickly, but the suspect had already disappeared into the narrow streets of Kirkwall. The Orkney Islands had never seen anything like it, and no one had any answers. Shamsuddin Mahmood was 26 years old. He had arrived in the Orkney Islands from Pakistan to build a better life. Like many immigrants, he came looking for work, stability, and a future. Shamsuddin worked at the Mumtaz restaurant in Kirkwall. Locals described him as hardworking, respectful, and soft-spoken. He had no known enemies, no involvement in criminal activity, and no history of trouble with the law. At the time of his murder, Shamsuddin was engaged to be married. His wedding was already being planned. What should have been one of the happiest times of his life turned into tragedy. For investigators, this raised serious questions. Shamsuddin had no clear connection to any criminal groups, no debts, no public disputes. There was no sign of robbery at the crime scene. The question that haunted both the police and the community was simple. Why would someone target an innocent man in such a brutal, deliberate way? In the days that followed, those answers remained elusive. But the small, tightly knit community of Orkney was about to be shaken even further because suspicion would soon turn toward one of their own. In the days and weeks after the murder, the Orkney police launched a full investigation. But from the start, they were working with very little. There were no fingerprints, no weapon was recovered. No witnesses saw the killer's face. No one reported seeing the suspect enter or leave. The only physical evidence was the single 9mm bullet recovered from Shamsuddin's body. Ballistics confirmed it was fired from a rare type of handgun, but without the actual weapon, that lead went cold. Rumors spread quickly across the small island community. Some whispered about racial motives. Others speculated it might have been a random act of violence, but the police could not identify any clear suspect. Despite extensive questioning, door-to-door interviews, and forensic testing, the investigation stalled. For more than 10 years, the case remained unsolved. No charges were filed. No arrests were made. the murder of Shamsuddin Mahmood faded into a haunting mystery that the island carried in silence. But then, over a decade later, an unexpected clue would surface. A clue that would reignite the case and point investigators toward someone no one had officially suspected before. More than 10 years after the murder, in the year 2004, the investigation took a dramatic turn. A letter was sent anonymously to the police. Inside, the writer accused Michael Ross of being the masked gunman who killed Shamsuddin Mahmood. At the time of the murder, Michael Ross had been only 15 years old. He was the son of a respected local police officer, Eddie Ross, who had served with the Orkney police for years. Michael Ross was known in the community for his fascination with military weapons and tactical gear. Several people recalled that he often wore a balaclava and handled firearms during his teenage years. The anonymous letter claimed that Michael had confessed to the crime years earlier, bragging about the murder to acquaintances. Following this tip, the police reopened the cold case. They discovered that the type of ammunition used in the murder matched bullets found in the Ross family home. These particular bullets were rare and not commonly found in the region. In addition, some classmates of Michael's came forward, saying that he had expressed racist views in school and made troubling comments in the past. Despite these revelations, no physical evidence directly tied Michael Ross to the shooting. There was no murder weapon, no DNA, no fingerprints. But with the letter, the witnesses, and the matching ammunition, police believed they finally had enough to make an arrest. In the year 2006, 12 years after the murder, Michael Ross was taken into custody and charged with the killing of Shamsuddin Mahmood. The letter that reignited the investigation arrived unexpectedly in 2004, more than 10 years after Shamsuddin Mahmood was killed. The sender's identity has never been publicly revealed. In that letter, the writer accused Michael Ross of being the shooter. According to the claims, Michael had allegedly confessed to friends that he was responsible for the murder, and the killing had been racially motivated. The letter detailed how Michael, as a teenager, was obsessed with weapons, often wore military clothing, and had access to ammunition that matched the bullet found at the crime scene. Investigators took the contents of the letter seriously. It provided details that, according to authorities, matched facts known only to law enforcement or someone close to the case. The existence of the anonymous letter also led police to re-interview previous witnesses and search for additional evidence. While the letter alone wasn't enough to convict, it became a central piece of the case against Michael Ross. It revived witness testimonies, reopened old leads, and built the foundation for the charges that followed. Without this letter, the case might have remained unsolved indefinitely. With it, Michael Ross's life and the community's peace changed forever. In the year 2006, following the reopening of the case and the investigation triggered by the anonymous letter, Michael Ross was arrested and formally charged with the murder of Shamsuddin Mahmood. His trial began in the year 2008 and would become one of the most closely watched legal cases ever seen in the Orkney Islands. The prosecution presented a combination of circumstantial evidence. The rare 9mm ammunition used in the murder was identical to bullets found inside the Ross family home. Multiple former classmates testified that Michael had made racist remarks toward minorities and immigrants during his school years. Some witnesses claimed that Michael had bragged about the murder in private conversations years earlier. The anonymous letter itself was used to demonstrate that people close to Michael had allegedly heard confessions. The defense argued there was no direct evidence tying Michael to the murder. No murder weapon was ever found. No physical evidence such as fingerprints, DNA, or eyewitness identification existed. The defense highlighted the significant gap in time between the murder and the accusations. Michael consistently denied all charges and maintained his innocence throughout the trial. Despite the lack of direct physical evidence, the jury convicted Michael Ross of murder. In the year 2008, he was sentenced to serve a minimum of 30 years in prison. But even after the conviction, doubts and debates surrounding the case refused to disappear. From the moment of his arrest in the year 2006 and throughout his trial in the year 2008, Michael Ross has always maintained that he is innocent. He consistently denied any involvement in the murder of Shamsuddin Mahmood. According to Michael, he had never confessed to anyone, and the accusations made by classmates and the anonymous letter were false or misinterpreted. After his conviction, Michael pursued multiple appeals, arguing that the evidence against him was entirely circumstantial. The key piece of evidence, the anonymous letter, came from an unknown source whose credibility could not be verified. Witness testimonies were unreliable given the passage of more than 10 years between the crime and their statements. No murder weapon was ever recovered, and there was no physical evidence directly linking him to the shooting. Michael's family has stood by him throughout, publicly supporting his claims of innocence. In interviews and statements, they have argued that police investigators, desperate to solve the long unsolved case, focused unfairly on Michael once the letter surfaced, ignoring other possible leads. Despite ongoing legal efforts, Michael Ross remains in prison, continuing to fight for his release. And outside the prison walls, public debate over the case has never fully stopped. In June of the year 2025, Prime Video released a brand new true crime documentary titled The Orkney Assassin: Murder in the Isles. The series revisits every layer of the case from the night of the murder to the trial, the evidence, and the growing controversy that has surrounded it for more than 30 years. The documentary digs deep into several explosive topics. Allegations of police failure during the original investigation, the mysterious appearance of the anonymous letter, and how it changed the direction of the case. Accusations that racial bias played a role both in the murder itself and in how the case was handled. Interviews with people close to Michael Ross, who continue to argue that he was wrongly convicted. Legal experts and journalists questioning whether the conviction was truly based on solid evidence. Since the release of the documentary, online discussion has exploded across forums, true crime communities, and social media platforms. Many viewers are asking hard questions. Was this a racially motivated hate crime that was finally solved after years of silence? Or was Michael Ross wrongfully accused and convicted based on weak evidence and a desperate need to close the case? The renewed attention has sparked intense debate not just in the United Kingdom, but internationally as more people discover the strange, isolated world of the Orkney Islands and the murder that shattered its peace. With new viewers discovering the documentary daily, the case of the Orkney Assassin has become one of the fastest rising true crime stories of the year. Decades have passed since Shamsuddin Mahmood was killed inside that small restaurant in Kirkwall. Michael Ross sits in prison serving his sentence, still claiming he is innocent. But many questions remain unanswered. Why did it take more than 10 years for an anonymous letter to surface, and who actually wrote it? Without physical evidence, no murder weapon, no fingerprints, no eyewitness, was the case strong enough to convict beyond reasonable doubt? Did investigators focus too heavily on Michael Ross because of pressure to finally solve the crime? Was this murder driven by racial hatred, or was there another motive that was never uncovered? Did the justice system fail either the victim or the accused? The Orkney Islands remain haunted by what happened that night in June of 1994. And now, as new documentaries, journalists, and online communities reopen the case, the world is being asked to reconsider whether justice was truly served. What do you think? Was Michael Ross guilty? Or was this one of the biggest miscarriages of justice in recent British history? Let us know in the comments.